This video is part of a series in which I'm taking a dive into famous baseball players that are typically associated with one team. But what if they never actually played for that team? Stick with me and I'll tell you the story about what could have been. What is going on, everybody? Thanks for joining me on my channel, Brutus on Baseball. For those of you that have been watching my channel for a while, you'll probably know that a lot of my videos are a bit lengthy. I like to dive into the detail on the history of things and really talk about all sorts of things that interest me. But also, I've had a lot of comments on my videos or emails, messages sent to me with people saying that they're surprised that I don't have a bigger following than I do already. And there's a part of me that wonders if maybe that's because my videos are a bit lengthy. So what I've decided to do with this, my next idea, is to split it up into smaller videos. The idea for the video was to come up with a list of about 10 players that are solely identified with one team, or at least almost solely. And I was going to put it all together in a video, which is going to take me a long time to produce. But instead, I figured, why not split it up into a bunch of 5 to 8 minute videos, something like that. And if I put them out a little bit more regularly, maybe that'll help me to drive a little bit more traffic. So consider this a bit of an experiment, and I hope you keep coming back to check out every extra player that I put out in the next few weeks. So like I said, throughout the history of baseball, there are certain players that will always be associated with a specific team, like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig with the Yankees, Sandy Koufax and the Dodgers, Mike Schmidt and the Phillies, Jeff Bagwell with the Astros, and so on. But what if some of those players were destined to suit up with another team instead, until something stepped in the way to alter the course of baseball history? I'll be asking that question in this series of videos. There's a lot of these stories out there, I'm sure, but these are the ones that really stood out to me. So the first player I wanted to talk about is very timely, because we just celebrated the legend, the myth of Lou Gehrig on June 2nd, the day associated with a streak of most consecutive games played until Cal Ripken broke that record in 1995. Lou Gehrig was, of course, one of the primary faces of the New York Yankees franchise, alongside his teammate Babe Ruth. From 1923 or so until that final season, he tried so hard to lace up his cleats at the age of only 36. He would pass away only a few years later in 1941, a victim of ALS. And a lot of people know that story and his famous speech that he gave. But during his tenure in the Pinstripes, he was formidable. Nicknamed the Iron Horse, he most famously played in a then record 2,130 consecutive Yankees games, rarely missing an inning and playing through all sorts of injuries and likely concussions, a trait that some wonder if it exacerbated his fatal condition at such a young age. He finished his shortened career with a .340 batting average, 493 home runs, 1,995 RBIs, and a career OPS of 1.0798, good for the third highest in history. Using advanced stats, he established career OPS plus of 179 against his peers, fifth highest all time in the history of the game, and he accumulated 114 WAR. He finished with 2 MVP awards and 7 more top 5 finishes. But what if Lou had never donned the pinstripes in his career? Gehrig grew up near the Polo Grounds in New York and was a huge fan of the New York Giants growing up. Whenever he had an extra quarter, he would use it to go sit in the left field bleachers to watch his favorite team play. He would grow up to become a two-way star in high school, playing both baseball and football, and he made a name for himself by hitting huge home runs in front of highly publicized situations. He eventually enrolled at Columbia University, fresh out of high school. But before he could play in his first game, he was approached by a scout with the New York Giants, Arthur Irwin. And Irwin asked if he wanted to try out for the team. Gehrig attended a tryout at the Polo Grounds in June of 1921. Even though he would hit 6 balls out of the park that day, the first ground ball hit to him went straight through his legs, and the Giants manager, John McGraw, told him to get off the field. But Irwin wouldn't let the idea of Gehrig playing for the Giants go, and he kept talking to the young ball player and told him he would get him a contract to play for the Hartford Senators of the Class A League. Gehrig signed that contract, and he would play in 12 games for Hartford under 2 different aliases, Lefty Gehrig and Lou Lewis. You'd think they would have put a bit more imagination into those aliases, but they didn't. So the reason for the use of aliases is that remember that Gehrig had enrolled at Columbia University. His primary focus was playing football at the time, as college baseball wasn't as organized back then, but he still would play for the baseball team at Columbia. Having signed a professional contract, though, he would no longer be eligible to participate in college athletics. Some people think that Gehrig didn't even realize that he could lose eligibility by playing for Hartford, but then wouldn't he have been suspicious about having to play under a false name? Who knows? But eventually, his coach at Columbia University discovered that Gehrig had been playing for a professional team, and he immediately called the other coaches for Columbia's biggest rivals to claim it had been an innocent mistake, that Gehrig hadn't known any better. And because of that, rather than being banned, Gehrig was only suspended for 1 season from playing college ball. But the entire fiasco resulted in the bridge between Gehrig and the Giants organization pretty much being burned. He had been told he wasn't good enough by John McGraw, and he had been advised to sign a pro contract by Arthur Irwin that resulted in his year-long suspension from playing ball in college. Gehrig had always been enamored with the Giants, but now it was time for some distance between him and the team that recruited him so hard early on. When Gehrig finally managed to play in his first season for Columbia in 1923, he set records for highest batting average, .444, slugging percentage at .937, and most home runs, quickly establishing himself as a legend in the circuit. Many don't know that he was also Columbia's top pitcher that season. During that season, a scout for the Yankees took a trip to see Columbia play and watched as Gehrig hit 2 home runs in 1 game, and then followed it up in their next game by hitting a 3rd home run and pitching a complete game for the win. That scout reported to the Yankees general manager, Ed Barrow, at the time, that he had found the next Babe Ruth, and immediately set up a meeting for the next day with Barrow and Gehrig. The Yankees offered him a $1,500 signing bonus and $400 a month, and Gehrig immediately accepted. It would take 2 years before the Yankees would finally give Gehrig the full-time job at first base in the 1925 season. Ironically, the Yankees sent him down to the minor leagues in 1923 and 1924 to work on his fielding while playing once again for the Hartford Senators both seasons. He would hit for a combined .344 average with a .708 slugging percentage and 61 home runs in just over 200 games for Hartford, where he also improved drastically with his glove work. As of June 2nd, 1925, Gehrig would take over for Wally Pipp, the Yankees' first baseman for the previous decade, and he wouldn't look back. But what if Gehrig hadn't been advised to join the Hartford Senators under a fake name? What if he had just attended Columbia to play his freshman season, and the Giants, his boyhood team, had come calling again at the right time without all that stuff in the middle to mess it up? Imagine he had been able to play under John McGraw for those 1920s, 1930s Giants teams with guys like Mel Ott, Carl Hubble, Frankie Frisch, and Bill Terry. Would the Giants have only won that 1 World Series in 1933? And would the Yankees have won all 6 of their World Series titles during Gehrig's tenure with the team? These are questions we'll never know the answer to, but it is very fascinating to consider what could have been if the Iron Horse had never put on the pinstripes. So there you go, a short snippet of a story for you today. Come back in a couple days and I'll share the next ball player that has a surprising story about how they ended up with the team that they're associated with. As always, take a moment, share, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. Let me know if you enjoy the shorter format of this video. In the meantime, keep talking baseball, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you around.